Art is almost entirely subjective. Everyone responds to art differently, and those responses change over time. Fads come and go, but one thing remains consistent: perspective. So perspective is equal parts comforting as it is intimidating. It's comforting because there are rules and those rules don't really change, but it's intimidating because those rules can feel a bit complicated at first. But it's not that complicated. I'm going to keep things as simple as I can, but before I start, please hit that subscribe button because it really helps. Thanks. So there are 3 types of perspective that I'm going to talk about, which are 1-point, 2-point and 3-point perspective. I'm not going to talk about 4-point perspective because 4-point perspective can f*** off. So let's start with 1-point. 1-point is probably the simplest, and so if the concept of perspective is new to you, then start here. 1-point perspective refers to the 1 point on a horizon line where all the lines that are going away from you converge. So they are all drawn to that 1 point. So if you've looked for 1-point perspective before, you might have seen people drawing train tracks or something along those lines, maybe a corridor, because these are really good examples to show the concept of 1-point perspective. I'm going to draw boxes for all of these examples, and you should as well, because they are easy to draw and it will help you practice these concepts. So here's how you would set up a 1-point perspective grid. So draw a horizontal line and put a dot somewhere on it. It doesn't have to be in the middle, it can be wherever you want. And then from that dot, draw straight lines that come out of it until you've got lines facing in every direction. And once you've done that, you've got a 1-point perspective grid, and it will help guide you when placing things in your scene. Remember that every line that is going away from the viewer are the lines that are going to meet at that point. The lines that go up and down or left and right, they are not affected by this point at all. It's just the things that are going away from us, away from the viewer. So although this is the simplest one, it'll still take a little bit of practice, as it can be quite easy to send the wrong lines to the point, but with practice you'll get a sense of it. So as I draw this box, we're going to start with the plane that is facing us. So you'll notice that these lines are not influenced by this 1-point perspective at all, because they're going up, down, left and right. It's a 2D object at the moment. But now that we're drawing the side plane of the box, these lines are drawn towards that point, which gives it that depth and the 3D feel that we want. So a side note, a plane is just a side. That's all a plane is. A plane is like a polygon in a video game, if that helps make sense. It's just a side. A side. A plane is a side. So 1 point is fairly simple, but now we're going to add another point. And this is called, quite conveniently, 2-point perspective, because there are 2 points. Are you with me at the back? So to set this up is exactly the same as 1-point perspective, except you just add another point. Now the trick here is to not have these points too close together, because if your vanishing points are too close together, it will distort everything. In the interest of practice, we're going to have these points on one end and then the other. In reality, your vanishing points could be miles off the canvas, but because we're practicing, we're going to put them on the canvas so we can see them and we can draw the lines to them. So now we're going to turn these 2 points into a grid, which is exactly the same as 1-point perspective. So we're drawing lines out from the points on the left, and then we do the same thing for the points on the right, and these lines will overlap each other. Now you might be able to see just from the grid a sense of 3D-ishness. So we're going to throw another box in here, and you'll be able to see how the 2 perspective points, or vanishing points, influence this box. So the lines that go up and down are still not influenced by these 2 points, so they stay the same as before. But the lines that are going left and right are being drawn to these points. Now this box is super stretched out at the moment, so we'll just put a vertical line about here. And then I can erase all the lines that I no longer need, and boom, there's a box in 2-point perspective. So I encourage you to put as many boxes as you can on various 2-point perspective grids that you've made, ideally, so you can get used to lining up your angles and making sure that the lines go to the right points and all that good stuff. Now before I move on to 3-point perspective, I want to talk about that horizontal line, or the horizon line. So the horizon line will broadly help you determine whether you're looking up at something or down on something. Anything that is above the horizon line, we're looking up at it. So if we put a box above the horizon line, we should see underneath it, and if we put a box below the horizon line, we should look on top of it. And this applies to everything, not just boxes, but boxes are easier. So you can put the horizon line basically wherever you want. It's kind of up to you. I'm going to keep mine in the middle because I want space above and below, and we're going to put a box above. So again, these straight lines, the straight up and down vertical lines, are not influenced by the vanishing points. Any lines that are part of the side that is turning, so the sides of the box or the bottom or the top, they are influenced exactly the same as before. So we put the lines towards this point, and then we put these lines towards this point, and because it's above, we should be able to see the bottom of it. So we take these lines and put them to this point, and these lines, and we put them to this point. And now you can see that this box is showing 3 sides because we're looking up at it. And this logic applies exactly the same if you were to look on top of it as well. So again, the more you do this, the more you'll get the hang of it, the more you'll understand, and the more you'll understand the logic of 2-point perspective. So now onto 3-point perspective. Now this one might seem a little bit intimidating, particularly if you've Google searched a 3-point perspective grid, because the lines are just all over the place, or at least that's what it looks like. But because if you go from 1 point to 2 point to 3 point, then you're slowly adding steps. Whereas if you have done nothing but go straight to 3 point, then it might feel a bit overwhelming. So definitely do 1 point and particularly 2 point first. Then 3 point won't feel that bad. So you've got your 2 points. The third point doesn't go on the horizon line. It goes either above it or below it. Again, there's no strict distance that it needs to be. But if you put the third point too close to the horizon line, all your angles are going to be really distorted, which might not be what you want, but maybe it is. So again, for practicing purposes, if you imagine an A4 piece of paper, if you've got your horizon line on the bottom and your 2 vanishing points either side, put the third vanishing point right at the top, as far to the top as you can, so you've got as much space to work in as possible. Again, you can experiment with this. You can put the horizon point further, you can put it closer and just see what happens. Now, if you want, you can put the horizon line at the top and the third vanishing point at the bottom. But for this example, I'm doing horizon line at the bottom, vanishing point at the top. So 3-point perspective is usually used for extreme angles. So if you're looking up at a really, really tall building, or you're looking down on a cliff, or maybe you're in a helicopter and you're looking down at a city, or any other example like that. So by their nature, these angles are usually a bit more extreme than 2-point perspective. So those up and down lines that were not affected by 2-point, they're affected by 3-point, and they go to that point at the top or the bottom. So we're going to draw a box again. You should be fairly familiar with the logic that perspective makes. So match up your vertical lines to the point above and your horizontal lines to the 2 points along the horizon line, and you're golden. Do this over and over again, change where the points are, experiment, have fun, see how it works. And again, once you realize that there is a logic to this and that all the lines need to follow this logic, then you can create really convincing 3D proper boxes, and then that can expand into other things as well when you're ready. But stick with boxes for now. Until you don't need to really think about where to put the lines, stick with boxes. And if you feel that you've been doing this for months or even years and you still need to use perspective grids, there's nothing wrong with that. And if anything, it's probably smarter to do it that way, because then you know you're getting it right. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't use perspective grids, because you can and you should. But if you need further guidance and you want to go the next step into perspective, I highly, highly recommend Marshall Vandruff. I'll put a link to his website in the description, and he's got a series on perspective that he did in like 1994 that I bought. It's like $12. I'm not sponsored or have any association with him, unfortunately, but it's really, really, really good. And so I thoroughly recommend it. But I hope this video helped clear up some of the mystique around perspective. It's not that complicated once you get used to it. And again, drawing boxes is the best way to do that. But if you have any other questions about perspective or any other concepts or terms that you find a bit confusing, so let me know in the comments and I'll make a video about it, or message me on Twitter or whatever else I've got. It's all linked in the description, so go click on the things. I've been Brinkley, have fun drawing, and I'll see you in the next video.